This video contains spoilers for Season 2, Episode 3 of Fiona and Cake. You have been warned. Now, we start off this episode seeing the Ice Queen, the same Ice Queen that we saw from the trailer for Season 2. And if you notice, the art style of this first scene is a little different. And it's actually pretty crazy, but this looks like a classic Fiona and Cake adventure, something that they would have gone on in the very first Fiona and Cake episode in Season 3. And that's for a very good reason. But before we get to that, we get a little callback to Finn and Flame Princess. You see, Ice Queen has trapped Flame Prince, and Fiona rescues him, and in order to resuscitate him, she kisses him, the same way that Finn kissed Flame Princess in order to resuscitate her, all the way down to the same burnt lips. But as we'll see, something pretty crazy happens. Flame Prince starts burning down the Ice Kingdom, and as an icicle is about to fall down, the world transforms. Now, what is this exactly? This is the exact moment in time that Betty saved Simon from the Ice Crown. We see the exact moment where Fiona's world went from magical to non-magical, and this is that. We know this because the world that we see after is Fiona's universe pre-Season 1, when that Simon's mind still had influence over the universe. The very first reason we know this is because we've seen Fiona in this outfit before. If you remember back to Season 1, Episode 1, the very first intro, this is the same swimsuit that Fiona is running in that intro, and she's also running here. Not only that, but we see that her world is corrupted like it was in Season 1, and we see Betty artifacts everywhere. We see her hat on a building, we see Gold Betty's eyes on a garage door, and we also see the same shapes on another building. And the nail in the coffin is we see normal Cake, pre-magical version. But another very interesting thing is we see a super porp vending machine. Now, this also makes sense that it would be here because this world is heavily influenced by Simon's mind, and if you remember, when Simon gave Marcy that pretend remote, it was a super porp can. So it would make sense that he knows what that is, and it's in this universe. Now, onto the title card and the name of this episode, the Lion of Embers. It looks like the animal on the bottom left is a wolf, and that is something that appears in the very end of this episode. But as for the record player and what looks like maybe a bunny, I don't really know. Now, we are officially out of the flashback because we see Fiona's torn down apartment building from the scarab attack. Just wanted to confirm that before we move on. We keep seeing these snails in Fiona's room, and it seems like the show is really making it a point to show these off because they aren't just background snails. I mean, some of the time they are pretty detailed and up-close snails. As we know from the last episode, Huntress Wizard is officially in Fiona's world thanks to some multiverse hopping and a seed that is now her, which is slowly growing. It's funny that we see baby Finn instantly attracted to this. It's almost like no matter what universe, no matter who it is, they will always find out a way to be together somehow. But if you notice what Huntress Wizard is doing, it's kind of obvious. She's a plant, she needs water to grow, and she currently doesn't have it. And it looks like she's not doing so well. And as we'll see, this is Huntress Wizard's driving plot point through this episode. But before we get to see any of that, we cut to the time room with the Cosmic Owl and Prismo and Atom with the Scarab still trapped in the time room. Now, from the trailer of Fiona and Cake Season 2, we knew that the Cosmic Owl was going to have some type of role in the new season. Now, in the time room, we learned something very interesting and very lore heavy. And as we see, it's pretty crazy. There is something beyond the multiverse, and it seems like the thing that is beyond the multiverse is the weird dimension that we saw Huntress Wizard in the previous episode, based off of this map that is covered in roots surrounding the multiverse. What's also interesting to note is Prismo says that he's not allowed to tell the Scarab this, but he does it anyway. And from what we've already gathered, this is something completely different, something that they don't even have the power to control or intervene in, which means someone else higher up has to. And as far as we know, the only person that is higher up is Prismo's boss. Could that be the voice that we heard in the previous episode inside of this dimension? It seems like all of these signs are pointing to that conclusion, but I guess we'll find out. Now, something a little scary happens. It seems like the Cosmic Owl also has a new voice actor, but he has to leave early because he has to appear in a croak dream. If you didn't know, the Cosmic Owl's job, his literal job, is to appear in dreams of citizens all over Ooh, but only ones that are supposed to come true. And a croak dream means that whoever the Cosmic Owl's dream, who he's about to appear in, is gonna die. Which is the scary part because right after he says that, we cut to a dying Finn. He currently resides in a lab that is being operated by Princess Bubblegum, who is trying her best to figure out a way to stop his poisoning. When we find out why the Princess Revolution took place. If you remember from the trailer, that's exactly what happens, and we find out why. And it's not as deep as I thought. It turns out all of the princesses found out that Finn was in grave danger and that nothing was working to heal him, so they all want to try and give him a kiss to save his life. This is almost some classic Adventure Time stuff, and it's pretty funny to see that all of the princesses across Ooo are still head over heels for Finn. He's still the ultimate heartthrob of Ooo. Now, as we go back to Fiona for a little bit, we find out the next steps in her plan for the fundraiser, and that's to find a venue, who she goes to Hunter for, to ask him if they can use the park as the venue for their fundraiser. But I want to point out one thing. Hunter did say this all the way back in episode 1, season 2 of Fiona and Cake, that these rose bushes were all of a sudden popping up everywhere throughout the park, and as we see, that is the case, which is interesting. And it makes me think, is Fiona's world now being influenced by someone else? If you remember back to season 1, Fiona's original world was influenced by Simon's subconscious, as we saw a lot of the things inside of his head appear throughout her world. Obviously, at the end of season 1, Fiona made this universe its own thing, free from that influence, but seeing random objects pop up everywhere all of a sudden sounds like that might not be the case anymore. And who is related to these rose bushes? Well, not exactly, but the heart of the forest looks eerily similar to some of these rose bushes, all the way down to their thorns, and Finn is in a death-like state because of the heart of the forest. So is Finn's mind somehow, somewhat controlling Fiona's world? I don't know, but it's interesting to see that these rose bushes are popping up everywhere throughout the park. Now, this is the moment that we've all been waiting for, our first official interaction with Fiona and DJ Flame. Because if you remember, we had none of this in season 1. This is their first official time that we see them talking to each other. And it didn't go how I thought it would go. It seems that Fiona has fallen for DJ Flame once again. Because if you remember back to season 1 again, DJ Flame was the one who broke up with Fiona over text. And it seems like Fiona has been in a very sour mood about him ever since. You know, every time she walked past a poster or hears his name on the radio. But all of a sudden, they're good here. They have this conversation that seems an awful like flirting, with Fiona even blushing, which ends in DJ Flame inviting her to attend his set in the belly, which we'll see is a very cool reference in a minute. But then we cut back to the Candy Kingdom. Princess Bubblegum is still not having any luck trying to find any way to cure Finn, which prompts Marceline to suggest giving the kissing thing an actual try, and I won't spoil it, so you have to go and watch the episode itself, but we get a pretty spicy moment between Princess Bubblegum and Marceline, which is really showing that this new Fiona and Cake series is TV-14. Speaking of spicy moments, they're going clubbing, and as we know from earlier, they are going to DJ Flame's set at the belly. Now, what is the belly? Well, if you remember back to the original Adventure Time series in season 2, episode 21, Belly of the Beast, inside the belly of the beast is a massive rave going on. And sure enough, inside of the belly, a massive club with a lot of people who you could say are raving. And as for characters that we know, there are only a couple, and I'm assuming the rest represent the party bears that we see inside of the belly of the beast. But for the characters we know, we actually see the human gender bent version of Party Pat right here. We see the skating girls that we first saw in season 1, episode 1, who tried to get Fiona to join them. We also see what looks like the human gender bent version of Big Destiny, which makes sense because he makes a small cameo at the end of this episode. But we also see Abraca Danielle, and of course DJ Slime, who we first heard on the GROF radio in episode 1, as we see on his sweatshirt, but we also saw in the trailer. If you did not know, DJ Slime is the human gender bent version of Slime Princess. It's at this point when Kate finally realizes that Fiona has fallen for DJ Flame once again, gets insanely mad, and they get in a little bit of a heated argument. But one of the posters that we see in the background is the poster for the aquarium that we saw in season 1, episode 1, and this is where we also see a better cameo of the human gender bent version of Party Pat. Back to some more spicy scenes that I will not spoil here, so you'll have to go and watch the episode to see, but it turns out that DJ Flame was not interested in Fiona at all, as he is currently dating Fennel, who is the human gender bent version of Fern, but up until this point, we didn't know their name, and now we officially do. Now, this is obviously not good for Fiona's mental health, as her state already wasn't the best, with her whole trying to prove that she's an actual hero, even though she technically is, but she doesn't feel like it thing, and then now with this, she is just spiraling down further and further. But speaking of people who are down bad, we cut back to Huntress Wizard, who is still without water, and from what it looks like, about to die from dehydration, when suddenly she enters the astral plane. In the previous episode, we speculated on her form alone that this was some type of astral planing, because in the episode Astral Plane, Finn gets a very similar form. But this confirms it. This is the same background that we see in the Adventure Time episode Still from season 3, when Finn first learns to Astral Plane, and this is the universe that he is sent to. So it's a cool little callback to that. This is the exact same background. The background, however, slowly transforms into the same background that we see in the episode Who Would Win from season 4, when Finn and Jake get knocked out by the barn and awaken to their dream and greeted by the Dream Warrior. And sure enough, the Dream Warrior appears again with this same background in the newest episode of Fiona and Cake. Now, up until this point, we had assumed that the Dream Warrior and the Spirit Warrior were two separate people because they are two separate colors, but Huntress Wizard calls this person the Spirit Warrior, even though he is the same colors as the Dream Warrior from the episode Who Would Win. But as we know, with the Dream Warrior or the Spirit Warrior, there's some symbolism to depack here, with the very first being the Spirit Warrior handing Huntress Wizard a glass of water and her unable to drink it. As she reaches for it, the water just disappears. Now this obviously represents her seedling in Fiona's world not having any water to be able to grow. Right after Huntress Wizard asks for help is a line from Cheers.
Oh, you want to go where everyone knows your name.
This is him responding to Huntress Wizard after she asks him how does she get back home. Now this would explain the bar's setting. As we know, Cheers takes place mostly in a bar, or from at least what I have seen in Adventure Time. I have never actually watched the show itself, but that would explain the bar setting. The very next thing is that he pulls out a beat and then says,
Follow the beat to the roots.
Now to me, this represents what we saw in the previous episode. That mysterious voice guiding her, telling her to listen, and then she turns upside down, locks in, and hears Simon talking about Finn. That seems to be what this represents. Locking in, listening for a beat, and then following the route, following the multiverse path. He then pulls out a hoe and says he uses it to dig underground, but then breaks it in half and throws it in some fire. I can only assume that this means that Huntress Wizard is going to have to use some unorthodox ways to solve her problems, to use some sort of tool that's not necessarily designed for that purpose. Or it could be changing her ways entirely. From the episode Flute Spell, we know that the Spirit Warrior told Finn,
Huntress Wizard only sees straight ahead. Eyes on the prize.
And of course, knowing her backstory now, we know this is the case. She was dedicated and locked in on cracking that rock. So does breaking the hoe, the tool to use to dig underground, be representatory of her having to change her ways? The methods that she currently uses to solve her problems no longer work, so maybe she has to switch it up. Obviously, Huntress Wizard is a bit upset. I think I would too if I was slowly dying of dehydration, but the word that she uses to indicate that she is dying is the word croak, which immediately makes you think that maybe Huntress Wizard is actually going to die because the Cosmic Owl was supposed to visit a croak dream and we have not seen that dream yet. Luckily, we see that will eventually not be the case, but before we can get any further, all the princesses are in line to kiss Finn to try and save his life, including Flame Princess. Now we actually saw this in the trailer and I thought it might have been one of those metallic soldiers from the dream sequence that we saw of Fiona in episode 1, season 2, but nope, it turns out it's Flame Princess and she's here to kiss Finn. Another amazing moment between the two and kind of seals their whole arc together and wraps it up very nicely, giving us a solid conclusion. Now, going back to Fiona, she is pretty heartbroken, as we can tell. She's had a little bit to drink and ends up spotting Hunter, who is in his gardening shed packing up for the day. But this whole sequence between the two is pretty special. There's also a pretty hidden but very huge detail about Hunter during this sequence, but it feels too big and important to just state it out loud here. So I'm gonna let you go watch the episode yourself and stumble upon it on your own because it's pretty crazy. Now going back to all the princesses, as Princess Bubblegum had thought, none of their kisses work, not even Flame Princesses, who she says might be because she's seeing someone. Now we don't get to hear who this someone is, but could it be Cinnamon Bun? Your guess is as good as mine, but we do see something that the princesses might actually be able to do that will help Finn, and that involves the Enchiridion. As we know from the season finale of season 4, we learned that after collecting all of the gems from the princesses, you can activate the Enchiridion. Now, the Lich uses this to open a portal to the time room, but I don't think this is going to be Princess Bubblegum's intention, because as we know, I don't think Prismo will be able to solve this. This is the heart of the forest we're talking about, and as we know, inside of the heart of the forest is that weird root tree dimension where Prismo says he has no jurisdiction jurisdiction. Now the Enchiridion is pretty much all powerful, so whatever she is going to use it for has a pretty good likelihood of it were to cure Finn. We cut back to Fiona, and she is not doing well. One quick little thing before we talk about Fiona's mental health is something that I spotted in her apartment. It seems like she has a can of Superport, which is interesting because we saw in a flashback that there was a Superport vending machine in her universe, but that was most likely only there because of Simon's mind controlling that universe or having a big influence on it. And from what we know at the end of season 1, she officially made it its own universe without the influence from Simon. So how is there still a Superport can in her apartment? Well, Finn would know what Superport is. That's what the episode Dark Purple is all about. So does that mean that Finn does have some sort of influence over this universe? Could be a bit of a stretch, but only time will tell. Now let's talk about how Fiona is doing because she's not doing well. She states what we've all been theorizing from these past 2 episodes.
I saved the world, and I'm still a loser.
Everyone around her is telling her how good she actually is, but she herself doesn't feel like that. That's pretty much what she has been doing throughout the entirety of season 2, is trying to make up for this. She wants to feel like the hero. She's been forcing her help onto all of her friends to feel some sort of good because she feels like a loser, and none of it's been working, which culminates in her looking down at her dead plant and realizing that she can't even keep a simple houseplant alive. But this is where I think things will finally start looking up for Fiona, because as we know, inside of this houseplant is the seed of Huntress Wizard, who up until this point has been dying of dehydration, and Fiona's crying over this dead houseplant is the very thing that ends up watering Huntress Wizard. I think this is our first small little detail that this will be Fiona's turning point, this exact moment. She ends up passing out, however, and we fall into another dream sequence. Inside of this dream, Big Destiny is a sheep herderer, and his flock is all of the Destiny gang. Now this obviously means that Big Destiny has a very big ego and thinks very little of the rest of his members. But why are we seeing Big Destiny? It seems kind of random. Well, if you remember, the Cosmic Owl had to leave the time room to go to a croak dream. And who do we see inside of this dream sequence? The Cosmic Owl. It's finally revealed who that croak dream was about, and it's Big Destiny. As we see, Big Destiny meets his demise by none other than Peanut, his only son. Now, what does this mean exactly? Because this seems like a pretty random cameo of Big Destiny, but your guess is as good as mine. But it does mean that we will most likely see Farm World Finn sometime soon, but we also know that to be the case because we saw him in the trailer, and we also saw him chopping wood in one of the multiverses that Huntress Wizard had to choose from in the previous episode. Now, Prismo and the Scarab were watching this whole thing go down, chilling in the hot tub, but one very interesting thing is that Prismo is still glitching out. We saw that that was kind of a cliffhanger back in season 1, and it kind of felt like one of those things that the Adventure Time crew will throw into just in case they do get renewed and they have somewhere to pick up from. But it happened again, which means we'll most likely get some sort of answer, or it could be another little thing that they're going to keep just in case they get renewed for a season 3. We're starting to see a little more Easter eggs in the end sequences of these episodes. In the previous episode, we see the same animation of Fiona watering. The first episode showed her watering nothing, the second showed her watering one little leaf, and the third episode shows her watering that same little leaf, but this time with 2 leaves. And as we know, as soon as Huntress Wizard got watered by Fiona's tears, she sprouted another leaf, totaling 2 leaves. Now, it was pretty obvious from the previous episode, but in the end sequences, Fiona is watering Huntress Wizard, and as we progress through different episodes, this sprout will only begin to grow larger and larger. But if you didn't know, I make analysis videos of each episode as they drop and try to get them out as soon as possible. I said this in the last video, but episodes for me come out at 2 a.m. and I record right after they come out, so I am finishing this up at 6:52 a.m. So sorry if I sound a little tired. If you don't want to miss the new episodes that come out, don't forget to subscribe. I appreciate all your support. I love doing this. I love talking about episodes. I love theorizing. Let me know what you think in the comments about this episode and Fiona and Cake as a whole. Thank you all so much for watching. I do truly appreciate it so much. But as always, stay adventurous.